Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegran, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 7-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, David and Hoges recap the Twins' 3-game series against the Texas Rangers. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me as always, wait, no, what's this? Dan's camping. Andrew Hoganson generously filling in for Dan as he's out in the great unknown Hogs of the wilderness for this Memorial Day weekend. Thanks so much for filling in. And you get to fill in on a winning series, Hogs, which wasn't always going to be the case for this last stretch.
I think I'm the good luck charm. Like I was part of some of the series streak, and then I was there for when we ended it. But we have not lost a series that I've recorded the podcast yet for this year, I think. So it's looking pretty good for me. So I think if we need to keep winning games, we need to keep me on here a few times.
Well, it's funny you say that, Hoax. So we offer this new feature now where you can text the show. And it just seems there's a lot of texts coming in that say we need more Hogs on the show. And, you know, that by itself isn't suspicious. But it's the additions of, like, what a sexy voice. What a hunk of man. Like, there's all these qualifiers coming in that I just, you know, it doesn't seem like it's just some listener out there. Hope.
My friends are way too trusting with giving me their phones is ultimately what, I mean, maybe that's kind of what it sounds like. I can't confirm or deny that I have anything to do with this, but yeah, it's just, you shouldn't just give me your phone. The sad thing is they're knowing full well what I may or may not be doing with it when I get the phone. I love that feature. It is phenomenal.
It's great. So yeah, folks, if you haven't done it before, feel free to text the show. It's great to get those messages, whether you have questions or comments. We love to hear from you. Also, I don't know if you saw this, folks. So it was Star Wars night on Friday night, and it was the T-Wolves versus Mavs game 1 at Target Field. I didn't go downtown, Hogs, because I was not convinced I'd find a parking spot anywhere near downtown. It would have been better to walk from home.
Downtown was hopping. I was actually downtown with my wife on Friday night to watch the Timberwolves game, so I only saw a little bit of the Twins game at the beginning, but it was phenomenal down there. Like it felt like Minnesota sports were back a little bit. Like it's fun seeing the Wolves in the Western Conference Finals. The Twins are looking good. It felt good down there. There was some excitement that Minneapolis hasn't seen in a bit.
Well, if you're excited about Minnesota sports, usually just give it a week, and then that excitement will dissipate.
Well, just give it that game. I mean, the last 12 seconds of that Wolves game, which we don't need to get into, it's just going to make me cry. But my goodness, they had that one.
But anyway, so Star Wars night. Twin staff, I guess it's tradition on Star Wars night to prank the players.
Specifically,
and
Kyle
last
Farmer.
year they had those stormtroopers that looked like statues, but they actually had people, so they'd move and scare them as the players walked by. This time they did the same thing where they put out a stormtrooper, but so now the players were at ease because the stormtrooper was in fact fake. But when they came around the corner, they had a live Chewbacca, an actor, not an actual Chewbacca.
An actual Chewbacca?
Jump out at the
they had a Wookiee there? Where did they find the Wookiee?
But anyway, those clips are pretty funny to watch players like kind of, you can see them settle and then have to like react again.
Oh, so good.
I get worried though, Hogs, with some of our players who are injury prone. That seems like a bit aggressive. Right? You never know what could happen.
Well, like when Duran walked around, he was like, "Oh, you almost gave me a heart attack." And I started thinking like that would be the Minnesota sports way. Like Duran's on the ER because he needed a triple bypass surgery because we scared him on Star Wars night.
Well, that and because Rocco injected him with something for saying something negative about Pete Mackey.
I have so many questions about that still. Like I appreciated you guys talking about that on the last podcast, but man, like what's happening there? Like I don't know. I didn't like that. I didn't like that one bit.
No. Well, with that, Hogs, let's go ahead and jump into the series recap.
Series recap.
Game 1, Hogs. The Twins come away with this one. You know how a lot of games there's ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs? A lot of these games felt like there was one high point, and then the rest of the game was kind of mid, but Twins win this one 3-2.
Well, yeah. I mean, all the scoring was done by the end of the 4th inning today. Like, I mean, Kirilloff gets a huge hit in the bottom of the 4th to win the game, essentially, for the Twins, but nothing happened after that. And this game started off weird because Ober gets on the mound. He really, really struggles through the first inning. I think he threw something like 37 pitches, which is becoming a bit of a theme game for him. And this was what the portion of the game that I was watching too. So the Rangers went up right away with the Seager home run, but he really settled in. It kind of seemed like it was one of those nights where, I don't know, like, do you think that he is tipping his pitches and it's something that he just goes to? And in this game, maybe he fixed it or realized what it was? Like, I'm like you, David. I'm not astute enough to be able to pick up on what those players are doing, even when it is something obvious. It's just not something I watch for. But it's always in my mind now with Ober when he gets these starts, especially when he goes from getting shelled to all of a sudden, I mean, what ended up being a pretty solid start for him.
Yeah, I mean, if you take away the first inning, Ober looks really good, but he only gets through 5 because he threw so many pitches in that first inning. So 5 strikeouts, 3 walks, 2 earned runs, obviously on the Seager home run. But then the bullpen is the big story here.
Yeah.
Okert, Thielbar, Jax, Duran, no earned runs allowed.
And it was good to see Duran finally get a good appearance there because not that he was struggling, but the last couple appearances just hadn't been great. He looked really sharp in this one. And that Ranger team's a good team. So to be able to shut them down for 4 innings with the bullpen was pretty phenomenal. And it goes back to what you guys talked about at the end of the National Series where Rocco had the quick thumb with Simeon Woods Richardson. It meant he had to use his bullpen guys in the Friday game with the day off, and he did it. So, I mean, at least Rocco, I mean, maybe that did lead up to having the win in this game with that day off. That was good managing there.
Look at that. Hogs praising Rocco early here. I like to see you stepping in for Dan that way.
That will be one of one.
Anyway, bottom second, Miranda and Castro both single, and then Vasquez gets a ground rule double to score Miranda, and then Castro comes home on a Julian RBI ground out. It was a little frustrating, actually, that Vasquez ended up hitting the ground rule because definitely Castro would have scored on a true double to the corner.
For sure. Yeah, that one. And it's always frustrating when the guy's like in the dugout already, and you're like, no, get back. Got to go back.
And then we'll talk about a big moment later here when Correa comes up with 2 guys on, and Tommy Watkins. I don't even know where to begin, Hogs, but we'll talk about him a bit later. And then some big news from this game, Hogs, is that we found out that on Saturday, Royce Lewis would begin his rehab stint at AAA, and clearly, Jose Miranda, Hogs. Jose Miranda took that to heart, and he stretches a single into a double. I mean, he can see Royce in his rearview mirror, and he's thinking, I can't throw this away.
As he should.
I am not throwing away my shot.
As he should. I mean, good for him. Don't throw away that shot. I mean, he has been pretty encouraging, and like we'll get to later, it's going to be a bit of a difficult decision, I think, to make when Lewis is done with his rehab stint.
Yeah, so last note here, Correa and Buxton both struck out in big spots in this game. It doesn't end up mattering, obviously. Twins come away with the victory. It was a little disappointing, though. You guys who are supposed to be your leaders couldn't get the job done. But again, Twins come away with the victory. With that, let's go ahead and move on to Game 2. Twins win this one, and this one was a fun one, Hogs. If you're only going to rewatch one of these games, rewatch Game 2. Twins win this one 5-3 with a little help from Paddock, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, again, like a bit of a struggling start where you just don't ever feel that confident when he's out there. But he went 5 innings pitched, only gave up 4 hits and 2 earned runs, only threw 73 pitches. So I think Rocco had a bit of a quick hook, but still, like, it was an interesting game. When you look at the box score on this one, it looks remarkably similar to Game 1, but way more exciting with it being stretched out over the whole game. I mean, it ended with another Kirilloff bomb, which was just phenomenal how he golfed that one out of there, but the box score looks almost identical.
It was a fun one to watch because of the Kirilloff shot, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But top 4, Kepler had a good catch. I guess they kept showing this replay like it's this remarkable catch, but it's one of those times where like Kepler was going back on the ball and he thought he needed to jump, but he really didn't. But so everyone's like, Kepler, make a leaping grab. It's like, well, but he could have stayed on his feet. Like, does it really count as a leaping grab if you didn't need to jump?
I love that you brought this up because since when did you become the police of routine catches, good catches? Like, why is this such a big thorn in your side? I don't remember this from years past, but this year it is
what
just
do you mean?
getting
The routine, we have to rehash the routine play discussion. Do you disagree with my assessment?
I ultimately don't, but... Now you're policing whether or not it's a good catch based on whether or not. I mean,
I'm not saying it's a good. I'm saying it's a good catch. It's not a great catch. It's a little bit silly that everyone's like Kepler flashes the leather. It's like, dude, it was a deep fly ball that he caught on the warning track, and he didn't need to jump for it, but he did. Like, I guess the replay, if you're telling me that you watched that, Oaks, and you thought, remarkable, that's as good as any catch Buxton has ever made on his highlight reel. No, not even close.
I think you just missed Buxton a ton, like, because you needed your true standard back out there again. I agree with you. It does drive me crazy, especially when like a guy runs in first and then the ball ends up going over his head, but he makes a diving grab, and it's like, well, if you would have just gone there first, it wouldn't have been that great of a catch. So context is everything. I will agree with you, but yeah, apparently you are now judge, jury, visionary and executioner of routine and great catches.
Bottom 7 here. The umps give Lorenzen about 20 minutes to figure out if he can pitch through this cramp or not. It's the strangest thing, Hogs. So we're sitting here, and Lorenzen comes out, and he's been pitching really well up to this point against the Twins, so it makes sense that the Rangers would want him to pitch another inning. But he's dealing with a cramp. And normally, I don't know, is there not a time limit on how long the pitcher has to decide? If it's an injury timeout, whatever. But it went on for eternity, folks. Like, they having a whole conversation. They had snack time. They laid out a blanket on the field, and they gave him a drink to help him, like, try and free up the cramp happening in his calf. I couldn't believe how much time it took. And Justin Morneau, I can't imagine that he's, like, normally the life of the party, like, just with sort of his Canadian way to talk. But he had a great line. He goes, well, my goodness, if the pitch clock was on, the Twins should start this inning with the bases loaded.
Yeah, that is one rule about baseball that I don't understand at all. Like, if a guy is dealing with anything injury related, it's like, yeah, take all day. If you want to throw 50 warm-up pitches, that's totally fine. But hey, if your coach comes in and accidentally singles for the wrong arm and that guy wasn't warmed up, he is getting out there and he is throwing his first pitch in 5 seconds. No warm-up pitches whatsoever. Like, managers get so ticked off about all of that stuff. Can't there just be a simple rule that we all know? But it seems so arbitrary. Like, especially in this situation where it was just like, what's happening? Like, are we in another inning break? But yeah, I don't get it. I have no idea what the actual rule is there, if there even is one.
Who knows? Probably not on the books here. But again, in the bottom 7th, a really weird inning, just a bunch of stuff happening. But Julian's up at the plate, and he should have struck out on a foul tip, but the ump says that it hit the ground, and that is not reviewable, and it definitely didn't hit the ground. And the funny thing about this, I was watching with the sound off initially, and then I wanted to hear like what was happening, because I'm watching the play.
Why is everyone so mad?
So I turn on the sound, and the announcers, I forget who was on the broadcast there, but they said, well, one of the managers is going to come out of their dugout upset. And I'm thinking, who's coming out upset? Like, what's happening here? So Bochy comes out, and he's just screaming at the umpire. So I understand what's happening here now, that they called it a foul ball because it hit the dirt. And it was so funny to me because I assumed it was going to be Rocco coming out because they, and so it was a weird play to watch.
The Rangers broadcast. So I just actually watched the replay of this because it was so funny. I watched the Rangers broadcast of it, and the Rangers announcers said the exact same thing, where they were like, well, I don't know what's going to happen here, but one of these managers is going to get tossed. Because at the beginning, they're like, oh, Rocco's for sure coming out. And then like, oh, no, he reversed it. And here comes Bruce Bochy, and he is going to let him know about this one. And sure enough, he got tossed right away. But that's a really hard call for the home plate umpire to make, because it was a foul tip. And I mean, Heim clearly caught it. Like, it didn't hit the ground, but his glove still did go down after he caught it. That's one where you think you'd want to be like, I don't know if they can signal to the first base umpire, the third base umpire.
No, that's what happened.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
From what I understand, the home plate umpire had the call correct, and then he was overturned by the third base umpire.
That's even better. That's even better.
I don't exactly know. Again, they didn't really go into the details on the broadcast about what happened, but I think that is what happened. I think the home plate umpire had the call correct the first time.
Which is funny then, too, when Bochy's coming out there to argue with him, and he's like, dude, you and me both, man. It reminds me of when Baldelli got tossed on the way back when for the Gary Sanchez blocking the plate, and the umpire had called him out right away. And it's like, what? Who do you yell at? Because he clearly agreed with you right away. It's like, hey, can you get me on the phone with New York or Toronto or New Jersey or wherever they are?
I want them to toss me. Yeah. We'll talk about the rest of this game later. Let's go into game 3. This one was really disheartening, Hoax, because you're coming in, you got Pablo on the mound, and you're thinking, oh man, how great it would be to keep this win streak going and for Pablo to get right. And he does the opposite of that, Hoax. He gets worse, I'd say. So Twins lose this one 6-2. Pablo only goes 4 2/3 inning, gives up 6 earned run, Hoax. What is happening?
I have no idea. And we'll get more onto his struggles too, but Seager continues to be hot. He gives up 2 home runs to him. Like I said before, this Rangers lineup is powerful, but man, it's so discouraging because we've had Twins games like this. Like, let's be honest, on the third game of a series where we've already won 2, where it feels like they just kind of rolled over. This didn't feel like that kind of a game going into it. I mean, you look at that starting lineup and it's more or less close to the A squad that we would want out there. And you have your best pitcher on the mound, and yet it was an all too familiar tale when we got through the game.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Pablo, like you said, because I got a couple of questions here, Hoax. But I don't really have anything else to say about game 3 other than it was a pretty dominant performance by the Rangers. Rangers. Start to finish, they were leading the charge here. The only positive I can say, Hogs, is that the Twins chased the starter for the Rangers after 3 2/3. He had already thrown 84 pitches, but it didn't matter. The Twins took a ton of walks, but they couldn't get the job done offensively, and with Pablo struggling, that's always going to equate to a loss.
Yeah, this game just kind of stunk, just overall. It was not a very exciting game, and it felt like the Twins were out of it from the get-go.
All right, well, let's keep pushing into our segments, folks. A very fun one to discuss. Puckett's Picks winner.
Touch 'em all, Kirby Puckett!
Puckett's Picks winner.
I'm sorry. I feel bad about this. I do. So here's the deal.
You
so Hogs
don't
took
feel
Buxton,
bad. You do not.
Hogs took Buxton, who scored 1. Dan took Larnach, who had 2. And then the listeners took Correa, who had 5. And I took Kepler, who also had 5. So we had to go to the tie breaks. And the first tie break is home runs. Neither of them hit a home run. So we have to go to most strikeouts. Kepler only had 1. Correa had 3. So unfortunately, I come away with the victory, Hogs.
You're on fire. Like, you are legitimately on fire right now. And I am so cold. Like, the listeners and I are just frozen cold right now, which is it's rough. Like, I don't think I've won since I was on the last time during the streak, so I got to start turning things around. I kind of have your Correa kiss of death right now, I feel like.
It's not a fun place to be, I can tell you that. But so I do lead the season currently at 9.5, followed by Hogs actually in second place at 4.5, then Dan at 3.5, and the listeners are at a lowly 2, unfortunately. But I can't continue this streak, Hogs. There's no way. If I keep picking last, how do I keep picking the winner?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I think it's actually been kind of one of our more fun years of Puckett's Picks, because like last year, the entire second half of the year was Royce Lewis. And we even joked this year that the top 3 were going to be Lewis, Buxton, and Correa in some sort of order. There have been times where I've questioned who the listeners have picked, but honestly, there's not like you could probably have 6 guys that you could be picking and they could go off at any given time. There's not like a leader in the clubhouse. I guess I'd probably lean Correa now just with how well he's been playing, but it's been a really fun year with lots of different guys, and I think it makes it a lot more fun because you're looking at different guys a little more deeply when you're watching these games.
Definitely. Well, with that, let's go on to Beast versus Bench.
Beast versus Bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
Well, for the sake of the listeners, Hogs, let's start with your Beast pick.
Yeah, I'll continue with what I was saying about Carlos Correa. He just seems like he's been incredibly consistent. Like, you look at these box scores and you're watching these games, he's always on base and he's scoring a lot of runs. His defense has been absolutely phenomenal. And I know I do this a lot when I'm on the podcast, where I pick a guy based on his last 15 games instead of just the series that I watched, because I think when we get to your pick, you'll see who the more appropriate Puckett's pick for this series was. But Correa's numbers were great in this series. He's getting on base. He looks like himself. I know we're sick of talking about it, but it looks like that plantar fasciitis is all healed up. He's moving faster. He even looks better defensively. That leadership, it's been fun just watching him out there, and I feel like we finally got our $30 million guy.
Definitely. I mean, his defense, it cannot be overstated how many plays he makes that look routine that are not routine.
He's won games, and I can't remember which one of you said it, but his arm is awesome. Like, he gets
it's
a play, and you're
arm.
like, there's
rocket
no way he's going to throw that guy out, and just chew. And I want to point it out again. When you were talking about how he waits for the ball to get to him at the bag,
yeah.
Not only does that help, because you're obviously the ball's traveling faster than you can move your arm in order to slap the tag down, but on top of that, the runner doesn't know the ball's there because they can just see his open glove, and then all of a sudden just chew. I love watching him play baseball. It has been very, very fun these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I loved your line here about finally having our $30 million man, because he's proven it. And last season, I think a lot of fans were disappointed because he wasn't really that guy. And this season, I think people are undervaluing the role he's played because the team isn't as successful as it was last season thus far. I think that this team, you could make an argument that this team is better than last year's team at this point in a lot of different ways, actually.
We're 4 games over 500 right now. We were 2 games under 500 at the All-Star break last year. Like, people forget that because we turned it on in the second half. I mean, granted, we basically have seen, we'll get to this too, we've seen 2 teams this year. Like, they're really, really good, and then they're really, really bad. But he has definitely helped with this turnaround a lot, along with other guys too. But the consistency is what we need from him, and we're getting that.
Well, I mean, if you want to increase your WAR, Hogs, there's a quick way to do it, and that's by hitting 2 game-winning home runs.
Do it.
So I'm going to go with Alex Kirilloff. I think he needed this. He's been struggling. Honestly, the last 45 at-bats, I think he has 8 hits or something like that. It's not great. But when 2 of those, Hogs, are game-winning home runs, it's pretty easy to forgive the rest of the offers.
And you could see that relief on his face a little bit in that Game 2 home run. Like he's normally a very stoic guy. He was loving it on that one.
So who do you have on your bench, Hogs?
I went with Castro. He went 1 for 8 with 4 Ks. And through that whole series where he was dropping every single fly ball that was within range of him and then chucking them over the Pepsi sign and forgetting how many outs there were, you would expect to see like a guy have a little bit of a turnaround there. Because I do appreciate how Rocco managed that, where he kept him in, because you could tell he was ticked. It's like, so sitting him down isn't going to prove anything more. Like the message was already sent. He was so mad at himself and he didn't want to do that. So I do agree with that. But then you got to back it up on the field. And he hasn't been doing that since then. I expect more out of him. He is a big piece of this team, specifically because if Buxton isn't playing center, he needs to be in there. And Farmer isn't doing well. Margot isn't doing well. So we need that guy to produce. This wasn't it in this series.
A lot of good points. And I do wonder, it's interesting to me because he's not a guy who was really supposed to be at the major league level even as early as last year, right? Like he was just sort of a journeyman at that point who was a non-roster invite, and now he's sort of established himself as a key piece of the team. But don't you think a guy like that, who has sort of really had to scrap to get where he is, it's interesting that it's the mental mistakes that are keeping him down currently.
Yeah, it really is. And I don't know how to explain that, but yeah, you could tell he was just as frustrated as anyone else was. So,
all right, well, I am going to give it to Lopez. We'll talk again more about him later, but he goes 4 2/3, as we mentioned. You have to give your team a chance, especially when he got a chance to sweep the series. It was just really frustrating that he seemed to struggle out of the gate, and they showed the chart of where the pitches were on the hits that he had given up, and they're all like the exact same pitch in the exact same location. And it's like, don't throw it there. Have you thought about just not throwing pitches right in that spot? Because that's where they're getting you, Pablo.
Yeah, it was like the Joe Ryan experience all over again. Just right down the middle on some of those home runs. So, yeah, that was just frustrating.
You got to stop saying that, Hogs, because Joe Ryan has turned into a certified ace, and you thought he was going to have a terrible season.
I mispronounced the name. I meant to say Pablo Lopez is going to have a step back. My Ober pick has been all right because he's been pretty good in most of his starts. But, yeah, I have been very, very wrong on my Joe Ryan one.
I did want to make one other note. I almost put the bullpen as my beast, Hogs. They went 12 1/3 innings pitched and only gave up 1 earned run. They have to get some recognition. We try not to do this where we give it to like multiple people. That's why I didn't pick them. But that is fantastic.
And against a very good offensive team too. So yeah, that performance was great. They have been a strong point for us this year for sure.
All right, well, let's keep pushing here. Rocco's Rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
Rocco, please let Alcala stay on this team. I know that you guys don't get along and you're not a big fan, but he's good.
Yeah.
He's a good pitcher, I promise. He might be a little lazy, I guess, sometimes when it gets covering first base. It was one play, Rocco. Let it go. He can throw the ball well. Please, let him stay on this team.
And they stretch him out, too. Like, today he threw 38 pitches, and he pitched 2 innings. Yeah. Like, he is a valuable member of this bullpen. Yeah, I don't have much more to add to that other than, yes, please keep him on the team and give him innings.
What do you have for Rocco Hugs?
I went a little Mowers musing with this. Like, I want to know why this team is so inconsistent. And I thought about putting it as my Mowers musing, but I think that this actually has a lot to do with the manager, because I don't know what else to blame it on. Like, I don't get how this team can win 12 in a row and then fall apart and lose. What did they lose? 7 in a row? And now, yeah. I mean, we won 4 of 5. Just right. I don't. What is happening?
I mean, it could be that they're playing good teams and then they're playing bad.
It
teams.
Is. That is
the most logical decision.
Good answer.
But you do wonder. I mean, this is always the question. We will never know how much of an impact a manager has on the game. But man, do we like to speculate when things go right or when things go wrong.
But the thing is, though, is he is supposed to be steady Eddie. Like that is what his whole claim to fame is. Which, by the way, I loved your you are Gardenhire and Dan is Baldelli argument. It's so true. Having spent a decent amount of time with both of you, it's so true. But like that, he is supposed to be that guy that is calm. So you'd expect consistency from that team, and we're just not seeing them reflect that this year. And baseball's weird. I understand that, but it just seems like this might be a little bit on the coaching staff. I don't know how to fix it, but it's frustrating because you see them play so well. And I think Texas is better than their record is right now. I mean, they're 4 games under 500, but they will turn it around. Yeah, it's just frustrating to see.
All right, well, with that, Hogs, let's go on to the Minnesota moment.
Minnesota moment.
I'll let you take the easy one off the board, Hogs.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot, but Kirilloff golfing that homer in Game 2 to win the game. I mean, that pitch was almost in the dirt. He shot it out there, and it was opposite field, so the strength in order to do that. The look on his face when he was rounding third was awesome. I think that sums up the series with him because he did it in Game 1, too. So, yeah, I'm giving that the Game 2 homer for Kirilloff as my Minnesota moment.
The best thing about that is Provis wasn't sure, and he refused to call it a home run. And so it's going back, and he's like, it's deep to left field. It's on the warning track. And Provis is as surprised as anybody in the park that it was a home run. Like, he wasn't sure. He wasn't ready to call it. The way he was calling it, you thought it was going to be an out on the warning track. And then it gets out, and you can just hear Provis explode. It's gone!
It was. I think we scared him because we'd been giving him the Dick Bramer treatment for so long about not wanting to do that. He would not commit. I thought the same thing. It was just so like, it's back and it's there and it's gone. Like, it was great.
Well, the launch angle, though, made it seem like it wasn't going to get out because it was so high.
He golfed it. He golfed it out of the dirt.
Yeah, got the old 70-degree out and just knocked that sucker. So I got to go with game one, bottom four. A little bit of a different approach here. But so it's the bottom of the fourth inning, and Correa comes up with Vasquez on second and Julian on first. And Correa hits a base hit to left field. And if you read through Twitter, you'll see that some of the Twins beat reporters are saying that Vasquez ran through a stop sign that Tommy Watkins has up for Vasquez. No. What actually happens is Watkins is windmilling him until Vasquez is halfway to home plate. And then he throws up the stop sign. You can't do that, Tommy. That's your job.
Not to Vasquez either. That's a locomotive that's running home at that point in time.
How many times have we told Tommy Watkins, you have one job, hands up or windmill?
You can't do both?
And you got to choose one.
You can't do both?
You got to choose one. No, exactly. You cannot do both. You have to make a decision, Tommy. It's your only job. It's the only decision you make throughout the course of a game that actually matters is if you put your hands up or if you windmill. And you can't do both because then you might as well not be there. If you're going to do both, there's no point to your existence because you are giving the runner absolutely no information of help.
If that's not a Gardy's gripe, I don't know what is. Oh, there we go.
There it goes. And that was Gardy's gripe.
I don't think I should be tossed here, Hogs. This should be Tommy should be tossed at this point.
Your dislike for that man is so great.
If it's any consolation, I didn't like Diaz at third base either. Yeah. I don't think. Yeah, there's no third base coach.
I think it could be your mother out there, and you would be frustrated at the end.
Remember, I was sort of validated because Gleeman did a deep dive into Watkins' set 2 seasons ago. After I'd been complaining about it all season long.
It was written for you. That article was written for only you.
I think so. Gleeman wrote it saying, yeah, you know what? This is a hard stat to calculate, but clearly Watkins isn't very good, or at least he hasn't been this season.
But there's no...
And everybody remembers that one play against the Tigers that he's like, well, I knew the left fielder had a bad arm. Okay, 1 out of 400 games doesn't give you a pass for these times when you can't decide whether it's hand up or windmill.
There's no team that's like, our third base coach is phenomenal, though, right? I mean, no one likes their third base coach because you only see him when he's got a bad play, but... I got it. I mean, it's been a lot lately. They've been stacking up quite a bit.
When the runner doesn't even slide, it's not even close enough for the runner to slide, you have made a mistake.
Just run to the dugout, too. Just call me for going out of the baseline. This doesn't matter.
That's what Julian did. You think he was out for a jog. He didn't even realize he was trying to run home.
Oh, man.
Anyway, okay, let's keep going here. Mauer's musing.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's musings.
Well, we have the same questions. I'll start with the one that we keep talking about, Hogs. But should we be worried about Pablo Lopez?
Yes. I think so. We're over 50 games into the season right now, and his ERA is 5.25, and it went from him having a bad inning here or there where you feel like, okay, that's just kind of skewing the ERA high to this was a straight up bad game, and it's been a while since he's had a good one. I think that guy still has the talent, and he can easily get back there, but yeah, it is for sure a concern for me right now.
Do you think that this is the Pablo who's the true Pablo, and last year was just sort of a blip, or do you think truly he's closer to last year's Pablo than this year's?
I think that'd be overreacting to say that, because I mean, you look at his career as a whole. Last year was definitely better, but his career as a whole has been closer to last year than it has been to this year, and it's not like the guy's 37 years old and he's aging. So I think it's closer to last year than this year, but probably somewhere in between. And I'm still not going to trash your take about how he could be a Hall of Famer if he figured it out. I think that's still definitely in play, but yeah, I think we should be worried about what we've seen so far this year.
That does need a little context. I was talking long term, I'm not saying he's a Hall of Fame candidate now. Obviously that would be laughable.
Yes, to be clear, you were just saying which Twin has the potential to get there if they can improve and whatever. We were just trying to pick one, so yeah.
Do we even need to say what you have? It's the question that everybody wants to know.
Yeah, I mean, when Royce Lewis comes up, who goes down? I don't know.
Who do you send? I mean, if you get that call, who are you making the choice?
I mean, Margot, but that's not going to happen.
Truly, though, if they did call you and they say you get to make this choice, that you would DFA Margot.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Absolutely. Like for the reason that we stated above, that his whole purpose was supposed to be to fill in for Byron Buxton in center field, and that is not what he did at all. Like, he was out there. I mean, I know he went out there like the game after we talked about it, but it has been Castro out there, and Castro can't play center field. We can't get rid of Castro for sure. I mean, I wouldn't even suggest him. I think Kyle Farmer is maybe another guy that you talk about, but the Twins don't DFA guys. So I think it's ultimately going to be Miranda, but I would do Margot or Farmer.
It's really disappointing because Miranda has proven he's done at AAA. He may not be an all-star right now at the major league level, but he belongs here. He's proven to belong here. His fielding still needs work. There's no doubt about that. But my goodness, the guy is hitting pretty consistently here. It's not like he's going 0 for 5 every other game. Like, he's really making good contact.
His batting average is .277 and his OPS is .757. So, I mean, that's a guy that's producing, and like, he was dealing with an injury still at the beginning of this year with his arm. I want a young guy up on the team who we know that there's more potential, as opposed to a guy whose career is on the decline.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is positionally, right? Like, Miranda is third base, and Carlos Correa is a shortstop, and Julian and Farmer are second baseman, and Santana and Kirilloff are first baseman, and Santana has sort of turned it around, so there's no playing time at first base. It's a bummer that Miranda can't play the outfield, because that would actually solve a lot of problems right now.
And the Twins will never put Royce Lewis back in the outfield again. There's no chance. Yeah, it's going to be a tough call ultimately, but I think it's going to be Miranda, unfortunately.
All right, well, let's keep going here. Series grades time.
Series grades.
I'm going to let you go first because I always have to go first. I'm hoping that yours won't be as long and drawn out as Dan's latest iteration of his system.
I sit back too. Like, when you were making fun of him, I sit back to listen to that portion of the podcast. I am trying to destroy my recency bias, and I'm giving them an A-. If you had told me that they went 2 out of 3 against Texas, won 2 games in halfway dramatic fashion and dramatic fashion, I would take it. And I think that after playing a poor team with not a poor team, but a not great team with the Nationals, and going to a better team with the Rangers and still winning the series over Memorial Weekend, that's an A- for me.
Yeah, I don't think that's terrible. I'm giving them a B-. I do feel like, you said game 3 kind of felt like they were still trying. I kind of felt like they didn't care. Like, when they got down, they were like, you know what? Let's just go home. I got some meat. I want to barbecue later. So I'm giving them a B- here because they had a chance at a sweep. And I think I would care less about game 3. Like, I think so much of this grade was impacted by Pablo's poor start.
Yeah.
Because if it was SWR and he had the same start that Pablo had, this is probably an A-. I know that's maybe not the best way to grade, but in my head, it's like, Pablo's on the mound. That should give us a good chance to win. And we lost this game because Pablo couldn't get it together.
I think I'm mostly agreeing with you, because like, normally in these games on these getaway day, I mean, it's not a getaway day because they're home tomorrow, but you know what I mean? The last game of the series, when they've already won 2, the lineup looks like a quadruple A lineup. Today was like a solid lineup, but they played like it was their quadruple A team. So I agree with you that it was just lifeless, which is frustrating. So yeah, I can see that grade too. I'm looking at it how Dan would without my heart.
Okay. Well, I'm so happy. Okay. That's the quickest we've ever done this segment.
That was such a dismissive laugh, and okay, all right.
With that, Hogs, let's keep going here. Lots to talk about in Herbie's headline.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbie pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
So I don't want to get super in the weeds here on this robo-ump situation, but the long and short of it is that Manfred has come out and said that robo-umps are unlikely in 2025, and even when they do decide to implement some electronic umpiring, it will likely be a challenge system as opposed to a straight ball strikes called by a computer. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Hogs.
This is one of those things where I'm trying not to get like upset about it until it actually happens, because I agree with you. Like, we have to know what the strike zone are for these guys, because it can't be the same for Aaron Judge and Jose Altuve. And so that needs to be ironed out about exactly where we're calling those. And if they can get that ironed out and it can be consistent and right every single time, then yeah, let's do it. Like, I'm done with watching these pitches be called balls in huge situations. So yeah, I'm all for robo-umps, but it has to be perfect before we do it. So I kind of like this, that they're not doing it. And then I don't like the challenge system. I do agree with you on that. Like, let's either do it or not do it, but it has to be right.
Yeah, I think I'm coming around to the challenge system a little bit, just because I think that when they go to the challenge system, I think that it's going to have to be just like the current challenge system, where it has to be irrefutable that that was a ball or a strike in order for them to call it that way or to overturn the call. And because I don't think that batters are really going to be challenging pitches that aren't ridiculous, that aren't Angel Hernandez strikes that are 7 inches outside of the zone.
They're doing it at Saints games, and it's really quick. Like, it doesn't take any time. I'm not disagreeing with you, but my counter argument to that would be is if you know that you can get it right every time, let's just eliminate the middleman.
Fair point. Yeah, no, 100%. It's a fair argument. So let's not spend too much time on that. I'm sure we'll have lots of time to talk about that, especially in the offseason. We'll have lots of topics like that. But so we have to talk about this White Sox-Orioles game. It ends on an infield fly rule. So guys are on first and second. There's an infield fly. Andrew Vaughn is on second base, and he is making his way back to second base because of the infield fly rule is called. And he gets called for interference for making contact with the shortstop for making the catch. It wasn't intentional, and the shortstop still made the catch with like seconds to spare. So the long and short of it is the White Sox lose the game where they're down 2. They should have had 2 runners on, but they get 2 outs recorded against them, 1 for the infield fly rule and then 1 for the interference with the shortstop.
The whole point that we're not going to robo-umps is because we want like umpires to have a feel for the game and like what's happening. Like that's an argument that I hear all the time. Can you think of a worse argument after that? Like, how do you not have a feel for what is happening in the game right there? The shortstop could have laid down and had a picnic and still caught the ball after he got to it. And here's the kicker. It didn't even matter. They called an infield fly rule. He could have like acted like he got shot by Andrew Vaughn and laid down on the ground and it still would have just been 1 out. Like that whole thing was unbelievable. And Vaughn never saw him and was directly in the baseline and walking back to second base as he should have been in that situation. Like it was insane. And did you see Major League Baseball reached out to the White Sox and apologized and said that they screwed up, which if there's one thing we know about baseball and umpires, they admit to nothing about if they are ever wrong. I mean, we had a 28 out perfect game and they still won't even acknowledge that guy was out.
To plead the fifth defense.
Oh,
it's very common.
So frustrating. But this just shows you in this case, like it was obvious.
All right, next point here. I just saw this meme and I thought it was the funniest thing. Luis Ariz has more hits in the last week than Joey Gallo has since August 12th of 2023, Hogs. How is that guy still in the league?
It makes no sense. Did you see the interview that he just did with like their social media team where they're like, if you weren't playing baseball, what would you be doing? And he's like, I don't know, man. I just never thought of doing anything. The only thing I'm really good at is baseball. And to be honest, that's not going so great right now either. It was so self-aware. Like it was pretty good. I appreciated the man. I mean, I've always liked him. He's hard not to like, but yeah, it was a good moment of self-awareness.
Well, don't worry, be happy.
Happy guy, Joey Gallo. Next note, 2 more notes here. My goodness, and these are former Twins check-ins here. So we always laugh about Eddie Rosario because he can make some ridiculous plays that are just like, what were you possibly thinking? And then at the same time, Hoax, he can make some great fielding plays. And what Eddie is probably best known for is for homering on balls that he had no real right to swing at. And this proves that out because Eddie Rosario now holds the record for the furthest inside pitch that a lefty has homered on.
Are you surprised, at all? Like that for sure.
It would have hit him. It would have hit him if he didn't swing, Hogs, and he jacked it out to right field.
I love that approach. Like, honestly, it's so fun to watch when you're just looking at a guy, like, he will swing at everything. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if I think I can hit, I had a guy that I played baseball with who was like that. Like, he would not walk. It could be 2 feet above his head, and he would be like, I'm throwing the bat up there, and we're going to get this.
I mean, Dan's camping right now, but I cannot wait for him to see that replay because his heart is, I mean, he's always been an Eddie Rosario guy, and like this goes back a long time now, but he is going to smile. Like, I want a picture of his face as he's watching that replay to see where that pitch was that Eddie hits out.
It's phenomenal. It is great.
All right, last note that Hogs brought to the show. Thank goodness, Hogs, because I don't know that either Dan or I saw this, but Miguel Sano, who's currently on the IL, which Miguel just has a bad luck streak when it comes to injuries, Hogs. But while on the IL and recovering, he accidentally burns his knee because he left the heating pad on too long without the cover.
I mean, hey, if there's one downside to Minnesota sports or ex-Minnesota sports, it's heating pads right now. We're either chucking them at officials or old people or like old Twins are getting hurt with them. But I mean, if I just told you that injury, like, hey, David, a former Minnesota Twin burned his knee because he kept the heating pad on too long without the cover, you wouldn't even think about it. You would be like, Sano. And I think probably after that, you would say Joey Gallo. Like, that would be your second guess. But Sano would be above and beyond your first guess.
I don't know that I would have a second guess. Like, if you said you can write down 3 guesses, I'd only write down 1. I would just know it had to be Miguel Sano. There's no way it was anybody else.
It sounds like we should point out, it sounds like he is okay, and it's just a temporary setback. But, man, what a Miguel Sano injury.
So perfect. All right, let's keep going here. Puckett's picks for the next series against the Royals, Hogs.
And we'll see you tomorrow night. Puckett's Picks.
So we should note the Twins are currently 5 back of the Royals, so they're not going to be able to catch them currently, but they could put a dent in their lead. It's so crazy. The Twins are 4 games above 500, and they're currently 7 back from the Guardians and then 5 back from the Royals. And then the Tigers and the White Sox are starting. I mean, the White Sox have started to fall off since the beginning of the season.
Yeah, like 10 games before, or 10 weeks before the season even started.
Yeah. But the Tigers are starting to do what we sort of thought the Tigers would do, and the Twins are, I think this team is better than the record shows, and they're already 4 games above 500, and there's no way the Guardians are this good, Hogs. I keep saying that, but do you agree, or do you think the Guardians are actually this good?
It's the same kind of thing with Pablo. Like, I don't think the Guardians are that good. I don't. But we're 50 games in, so like they're good. I mean, there's 3 teams in the AL Central that would make the playoffs right now. It's crazy.
I don't understand baseball sometimes, Hogs. It's quite baffling me. But anyway, Puckett's picks here for this Royal Series. The listeners are going to take Correa, and then Hogs, you're up next.
Well, I'm going to do what I do best, and I'm going to chase a guy who just had a phenomenal series, and I'm going to pick Alex Kirilloff. I hopefully he's getting out of his slump. That 214 batting average is going to keep rising. He's hitting well at target field. I'm taking AK.
I don't think that's a bad choice at all. Dan's going to take Kepler, which drops Buxton to me. And I have no problem taking Buxton here because, honestly, he has had about the worst luck as anybody on the team because he's had a lot of hard hit balls that guys have made amazing catches on, or he's had terrible strike zones that umpires just don't understand what inside and outside pitches look like.
Yeah, it's been a rough start of the year for him. Hopefully he can turn it around. I don't think that's a bad pick either.
No, I think he's going to have a big series here. But with that, Hogs, thanks so much for filling in. Would you mind sending us out?
I absolutely would. Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on X at Min for the Win and find our Min for the Win Facebook and Instagram pages. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on your favorite podcast platforms so that you're notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating or a like, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show further, you can find us on Patreon. Link in the description. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Twins.
That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, 2 avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.